Alright, so our salve has been infusing, our oil has been infusing for about an hour now. And what I'm looking for is to see that some color has transferred into the oil and that all of my plants in there are looking, they're looking like they've wilted fully and they're not looking crispy or fried, right? Because we're keeping the temperature at a low temperature. And you could keep going for a while longer. An hour is kind of the minimum, but you could certainly go longer. So we're gonna keep the heat on, but I'm gonna take this off and I'm gonna strain out the plant material. Pour it into here. And this is where it can get a little messy, where you might want a canning funnel or just something to clean up with. So you can see how nice and dark that color is now. So it really picked up a lot from the chickweed and the plantain. So I'm going to let that drip there for a second. I'm going to get the rest of it out of here. So we're going to be putting the oil back into this pot. So now I want to clean this pot. And I'm not going to use soap and water. I'm just going to wipe it out with a paper towel for now. Just so there's no plant debris left in there. Alright. So once it looks clean in there, we put it back on the heat. And make sure we got all the oil out. And that goes back in. And you'll recall that we did 8 ounces of oil. So generally, I like to make my salves with 1 ounce of beeswax for every 8 ounces of oil. You can do more or less than that. If you do less than that, your salve is going to stay pretty soft. And when it gets exposed to heat, like if you have it in your pocket or it's summertime, it's going to get pretty liquidy. And so you do need to be concerned about that, especially if you might have it leak somewhere. If you go further and do more than 1 ounce, then it's going to become more solid, kind of more like a lotion bar or a chapstick maybe. And in this case, we are trying to create that barrier, so having more wax might be beneficial. What I'm going to do instead of adding more wax is I'm going to add some shea butter, because I know that shea butter is really thick and it really coats the outside of the skin, and it doesn't sink into the skin very well. It doesn't penetrate into the skin very well. And in this case, that's what I want. I want something that's going to stay on the outside. So let's go ahead and turn on our scale, and we're going to switch over to ounces. We were on fluid ounces before. Okay, so we need about 1 ounce because we have 8 ounces of oil. All right, that's good. So you can buy this in many different forms. The way that Taylor makes it, in this really thin form, I really appreciate, because it's really easy to just, snap it into smaller pieces. People also like to buy the little pastilles. Those are pretty expensive, but if that's your preferred method. Either way, though, what we're trying to do is get this beeswax to fully melt. So I'm just making it into smaller pieces. We've still got the heat on low. So we did about 1 ounce of beeswax. I'm going to stir that up, and you can see that they're already starting to soften and dissolve in there. So we're going to give it a few minutes to do that. And then I'm going to take just a chunk of shea butter. And I'd say we can measure it just to see. But I was thinking like maybe half an ounce or so. All right. Maybe even less than that. Let's see what the texture is like when we put in about half of that. Alright, so I'm just stirring it to encourage it to melt. If you've never made anything like this at home, just know that beeswax can be difficult to get out of things. It's not impossible to get out of things, but it is difficult to get out of things. So if you're going to be making things like salves on a regular basis, or things that include beeswax, maybe like maybe you're making lip balm and things like that, you might want to consider having a pot that's just for this. So this is my pot that's just for making salves or making things that are going to include beeswax. That way I don't have to agonize and worry so much about cleaning it, to the point that there's no beeswax, because it might be difficult to not have any beeswax. Alright, almost done. I'm going to go ahead and put the rest of that shea butter in there. So with the wax in there, as soon as we turn the heat off and it starts to cool down, that wax is going to start to harden. And that's what's going to set our salve so that it can be in a more, less liquid and more stable form. It's still going to be spreadable, it's still going to be soft when we're kind of putting it onto our skin, but this will keep it from, leaking out of the jar just by having that beeswax in there. Otherwise, you can certainly just make an infused oil and use the oil. Alright, looks like we got it all. Alright, so I've got my 2 jars here. Might need 3, but I bet 2 will probably be enough. And I'm just going to pour it right into this jar. We've got a little bit left. Alright. And now we're just going to let that sit. And we can already start to see it changing color a little bit. It's going to set pretty quickly from the bottom, and it'll start to set to the top. And we'll check back in a few minutes so you can see what it looks like when it's totally finished.